Hi everyone, I'm here again to discuss the lesson 9 in developmental reading 1, reading literature. So in reading literature, here are the reader response. It focuses on the reader and the way the reader responds to the text. And here are the general steps used to elicit the reader response according to Prost in 1988. For step 1, creating a reader response environment. So in here, we will establish a setting in which students feel free to respond, and each response is valued so that students do not worry about rightness or wrongness. For step 2, preparing to read the literary piece. In preparation for reading a literary piece is basically the same as that for reading any text. A guided reading framework might be used, and in the preparatory stage, a schema is activated, new concepts, vocabulary, and words are taught. Interest in reading the selection is engendered, and a purpose is set. The purpose generally is open-ended to evoke a response. As an alternative, the teacher might read aloud and discuss the first portion, especially if it is a chapter book or a novel. And next step is reading the literary piece. So in here, students read the work silently. However, if it is a poem, the teacher may elect to read it aloud, as the sound of poetry is essential to its impact. And for the step 4, small group discussions, the literary piece is discussed by groups of 4 or 5 students. In small groups, each student has a better opportunity to express her or his response to the piece and compare it with those of others. And also discussions is very essential because it leads to deeper exploration of a piece. And there are some questions that might be used to evoke a response. 4 or 5 questions should be sufficient to evoke a full discussions, like which part of the selection stands out in your mind the most. Picture a part of the piece of your mind. Which part did you picture and why? Was there anything in the selection that bothered you? Or was there anything in it that surprised you? Or what is the best line or paragraph in the piece? So these are only some questions might be used to evoke a full discussions in the class. And there are also a procedure in reading literature. The first procedure is the book selection. So students choose up from among about 5 books. Each student might list 3 choices, or teacher might select a book. Next procedure is formation of groups. So teacher forms groups based on student selections. Reading ability can be a factor. The third procedure is agreement on procedures. So the class formulates basic procedures for completing assignments and discussing books. The fourth procedure is group discussion. So in here, the groups meet 1 or more times a week. to have their own discussions. And the next procedure, debriefing. The group talks about how discussions went and decides on ways to improve discussions. And the whole class sharing. So groups periodically talk with the rest of the class about the books they are reading. So they will have to share on the class about what they had read. And that's all for the procedure in reading literature. And let's move on to strategic literature discussions. According to Clark and Byrne in 2005 and 2006, there are four strategies for summarizing. There were so many details here. What were the main things that happened? And if you had to tell me what this was about briefly, what would you say? So that that's all for summarizing. All the details are in the summarizing. And for analyzing the author's craft, in here, what did the author do to help us understand the text, and what special techniques did the author use? So it's all about the author's craft, how he worked or how he made the text. Next is questioning. So, are there parts that were hard to understand? Or as you read, what did you wonder? As you read, what questions came to mind? So, that's all for questioning. The last is making connections. So, this makes me think of another story that we read that had a mystery in it. How was the mystery in that story like the mystery in this one? How did the main character feel? Have you ever felt that way the main character did? So there is a making connections on what you have read. And the next is checklist for choosing books. The first thing you need to do is to look if the book is interesting. Is the book about as hard as other books I have read? Can I read most of the words, or can I understand what the book is saying? So here these are some guide for checking or for choosing the books. And after that, there are also questions for closing reading. So this would apply after the reading. So for question 1, what question is the author trying to answer? What is the author's basic concepts? What are the author's important inferences or conclusions? What information is the author using? What are the implications of the author's reasoning? What assumptions is the author making? And what point of view has the author taken? And the last is, what is the author's main purpose? So these are some questions that might be used in for close reading, to have a also a assessment if the students understand for what they have read, and or to give them uh, a time, or to give them a time to explain or express what have they understand on what they had read. And that's all for the lesson 9. Thank you.